In this video, I will talk about my experience with starting a YouTube channel. And actually, this one will be my first one that you're watching right now or listening on a podcast. You will probably go through the same experience that I've gone through. And in short, if you don't want to watch the whole video, the point of it is that if you have something to say, if you want to express yourself, you should just go and do it and not care really what the results will be initially, because no matter how much you're trying different modes of expressing yourself, you'll never really be ready. And if you get too obsessive about it, you'll never publish anything out there. So I'll tell you how the whole thing started with me. I'm a talker, and eventually I pretty much tired everyone around me. I had constantly new ideas. I was reading a lot. I had a lot of opinions on pretty much everything that was happening around me and out there. So a friend of mine actually suggested it. Said, listen, you have to start writing and get a blog. He didn't mention YouTube specifically, but it doesn't matter. It's the same thing. So this idea has been there for maybe, I would say, a year or two. And it was getting harder and harder for me to actually ignore it. Maybe partially because so many of my friends distanced themselves in a sense that they found reasons not to be around me to listen to what I had to say. And I don't blame them, by the way. I'm like a machine gun when it comes to generating ideas and things I want to talk about. Now, so I went and I bought the camera, right? I knew not to go overboard because I have started before adventures like that many times, and after a couple of months I would give up on it. But this time it was different. It just wouldn't go away. So nonetheless, I played it safe. I think it was a good idea, even though now I'm pretty much convinced that I should get something more professional. And I started to record. And very quickly I realized that something was not right. The voice that I was hearing, the body language, something was very unnatural about it. And I wouldn't say I was really that surprised. I knew that that when you're looking at yourself from the outside, you're seeing something very different, right? So in your head, your voice maybe sounded in a particular way, but when you actually hear it in the recording, you were surprised. So I started to look for my natural way of expression. I was not trying to become better at not being myself, which I think a lot of people do. I think this is called acting. And yes, there is a natural way to act too, and this is the difference between a good actor and a bad actor. But what we're doing here on YouTube is different. We are channeling ideas through ourselves, and we're almost like the connector. And if we behave us, the connected that we're not, the information becomes skewed to the point that it's actually flipped around. So I started this very slow process of recording, watching it, spotting the mistakes, by the way, very quickly. I got to the point where I could just watch 15-20 seconds of the video that is, let's say, 5 minutes long, and I could tell right away, no, I was going in the wrong direction, right? That was not me. And usually when you start the wrong way, you start to build on the wrong foundation. So then I said to myself, well, maybe you should just do podcasting or record your voice and then add in the background stock video. And the thinking was that if I have less things to worry about, like the visual, and just focus on my thought and the way the voice presents it, then it'll be easier. And I think it was. But then when I looked at having to download all these stock videos and then having to edit them, just the amount of editing that would have taken, it was ridiculous. And I don't really have any experience with editing. I don't see it as a rocket science, at least to do the basics, what I need. I downloaded Final Cut Pro and I started doing it. It was interesting and it was easy. But the amount of clicking and, monkeying around with gluing together the right kind of stock videos and even finding them and then downloading them because they're such a high quality, it takes forever, right? So I'm someone that likes to just channel ideas, right? And if I have 20 of these every day, but it takes me a couple of days to just get a video ready out there for each idea, I know that this will just choke me, right? And this is not my way of expressing myself. So anyways, I gave up on that. I think I spent about a week entertaining this idea and actually working this way. And I just dropped it. And I went back to, I'm the content, right? Visually and sound, and end of the story. And you guys, I think, will go probably through the same thing. But the main idea of this video is not really to go into the technical difficulties, it's more of the personal discovery that I had to go through, and I'm still discovering it, by the way. I think I'm just scratching the surface, because the thing about who you are is also something that keeps on evolving, right? You're not really a being, you're more of a, you're becoming something, and you're constantly changing what you're becoming. It's almost like a direction you're going in. And but that's not to say that there aren't wrong directions, and this is what I was sensing basically when I was reviewing these videos and the recordings as well. So halfway through this process, I went out there like most people do, and I was looking for guidance. And there's tons of videos out there that will give you pretty much everything you need in terms of what you should and shouldn't do. And I think I spent the whole day doing this, and I was very excited. But then I thought about it more. I tried some of the things, and I mean, things got even worse, right? Because what I saw out there, I've seen before, which is some kind of a 2-3 main styles or way of thinking how things should be done, and somehow everyone is supposed to fall into these couple of standards. And I realized that this is not me at all. Like, for example, they were saying you have to have a lot of energy on the screen, certain shots from here and there, and you gotta capture the viewer or the listener right away? Well, maybe for some styles of presenting information in an entertaining way, yes. But this is not really what my ideas are about. My ideas cannot be expressed in 45 seconds. This is what politicians do, and most of the time it makes no sense what they're saying. It's indefensible, basically, because if you actually pressure them to really elaborate on it, they get stuck, right? So I rather start with the long version of my ideas. I rather have the opportunity to build a case than to just go straight on and just blob some stuff out there that sound good, but they only provide some kind of a entertainment or usefulness to the listener that wears off very quickly, right? Sort of like, yeah, it's entertaining, but I won't really do anything about it in my life of what I just heard, right? Or even if I do, it's a kind of like fashion, 2-3 months, and then it doesn't work, I move on, right, to another shallow idea. So I moved away from that very quickly, and I realized that I should just speak my mind, correct some obvious errors that have nothing to do with whether I'm being myself or not. Like, for example, get a decent sound quality. For example, I'm somebody who mumbles. This is what I do when I think. Therefore, I crank up the volume a little bit so people can hear me. I'm not going to force myself to yell at the mic so people can hear me. Basically, it's when I'm expressing an idea, there's a lot more going on than just the content, and what is going on outside of the idea. It's, for example, the presentation, and if I am to be myself, I have to be allowed to mumble, but at the same time, you deserve to be able to hear me. So I'll find a solution to it. So this is what I mean by covering some of the basics, and the rest is pretty much you, right? Because if it's not you, I guarantee you that you will start saying things that you don't believe, and this may fly for a while, but eventually people will start kind of saying, I don't know, this guy, a few months ago I thought he was Jesus, now I don't know what he's talking about, he's full of shit, right? And they'll move on, right? But also at the same time, you shouldn't be really doing this for others. It's just yourself. If you're somebody like me who needs to express his ideas, and I don't say as if I and you are some kind of exceptions. We're exceptions in how we're expressing it. Everyone needs to express himself, right? If you limit somebody in how they express themselves, this is choking them, and eventually they'll find a ways to project that expression in all sorts of crazy ways. So if somebody's sitting out there and trying to convince you that you're some kind of a freak because you're focused on expressing yourself in a certain way, even the game that they're playing in trying to convince you that you're some kind of a freak is their own expression, right? So everybody does it, right? So go out there, speak your mind, see what happens. So look, for example, what I have here. I remember at the beginning I was so obsessed with what I'm going to have behind my background, if I am going to be looking at the camera all the time, what chair I'm sitting on, and eventually I gave up on this. because I realized that this was basically taking over the whole adventure. It was becoming about what's in the background and not actually what I'm saying and doing. So I found my most comfortable part of the house that I spend most of my time when I read or I socialize or I watch TV, and it's this chair. It's an old chair, maybe from the 60s. This is my natural environment, and this is my natural way of speaking. I'm not rushing. I'm not raising my voice. I go at my own pace. I go my own way at expressing my ideas. So now if you're able to just get a camera, start recording, and then publishing right away, good for you, right? But I think most of us won't be able to do this. And you have to find the right amount of time where you spend doing what I'm doing now, reviewing the video, spotting the mistakes, and then correcting them. I would say do this for about a month or two, and you should be ready then to have a decent representation of how you're going to be expressing your ideas out there, and start publishing and see what happens. Now, some of you might say, well, why don't you care about the background in the same way you care about how you are expressing yourself? Well, because I think the more I emphasize on the background, the more I'm hiding my true self. And this whole adventure or exercise that I'm doing now with YouTube is actually about self-discovery. Right? I think it's very different when a man stops hiding in his thoughts and goes out there and expresses these thoughts in actions, or at least talking to people about it. It's different when whatever you have in your head is actually exposed to others, watching the reactions of others and how you're reacting and respond as well. This is, I think, the true test. I mean, the ultimate test is actions, of course, but we can't really act on everything we think. I hope not. I don't think I want to live in that kind of a world. But this is why I believe in just doing the basics, and this is not to say that I will remain with this background. I'll change things. I'll play a little bit with it, but the priority is how I am in front of the camera and to be as truthful as possible. So I don't want to go into these sideshows. And again, this is not to say that the entertaining kind of deliver information is going to die on YouTube. I think it's going to prosper and continue to do so. But I think there is another hidden mode of expression or purpose that many of the YouTube content providers will eventually discover, is the one of what I'm trying to do. I think we're heading in a very interesting future. I think most people will get most of their learning experience about life as a whole through this kind of medium and through people like the content providers that are leaning more towards the educational style of presenting information. And this is not to say that education shouldn't be fun But there's a difference between making it interesting and acting like a monkey on the screen, right? Which I see a lot of people do out there, right? So I think what will happen with many of the content providers who are doing very well right now, but they're emphasizing too much on the shocking value in the way information is presented, there will be very few of them who will do extremely well, right? And the rest will just fall off. Many of those who drop will continue to struggle with the hope that the good old times will return, but it will be a meager existence compared to what they were before. I would approach it differently, and I say this not because I have a choice, but I think this is just me. And I sound like I have a chance to be the entertainer that these guys are. I don't, right? So I'm not going to sit here trying to convince you that I can reach this great opportunity, but I don't want to take it. No, I know I can't. This is not me, right? But I believe that I can reach for something else because it is me. So this is not really about choice, in my case at least. But to be part of this other way of expressing knowledge, experience, you have to be able to reach deep within yourself and put it out there in a way that most people that are listening will feel it too. And usually this happens if you strike a chord with something that it's timeless, right? So you're gonna notice that a lot of the knowledge that it's on the YouTube right now, it's pegged to a particular short-term excitement. It doesn't really go any deeper than the skin, and people lose interest in this kind of stuff. So if it relates to the human condition, something that we've been struggling for thousands of years, something that just doesn't go away, whether it's something good or bad, good or evil, you will do well if you present this to people. So it's a short-term failure, I would say, in, for example, looking at the numbers and having very few subscribers, and people just listen to your video and after 15-20 seconds they move on because they're looking for a quick fix. But long term, you will notice that gradually people will gravitate towards your channel. And you know what? You should find out if you're really made to do this within a year or two. It's not going to be, if you, let's say you fear disappointment, if you fear the failure, for example, you thought that you are made to express these ideas, and then it turns out 10 years down the road that it's a failure. You're not going to experience that. I think within a year or two you will know if you're a failure or if you are on the road to success, right? You'll be able to see the numbers. You'll be able to see it in the comments that people are leaving behind. And this concept of being yourself doesn't just apply to your YouTube career. if you master this, you will begin to also maneuver very differently in your life out there. This not being ourselves is not a little issue. I think it's everywhere, and it's detrimental to so many aspects of society. Take, for example, dating, right? I kept hearing how people are complaining how a guy starts dating a girl and he is being himself, and then suddenly after 6-7 months of dating, he changed. At least this is what I hear, let's say, from the girl. And I would respond by saying, no, he actually went back to what he was all along. He just did not present himself as what he is at the beginning. And now I understand that the girl probably was doing the same thing, and that actually encourages him to even be more artificial by her putting her unrealistic demands out there. Right? I very often say to female friends that the idea they have of a perfect guy does not exist. Or even if it exists, there's 6 of them in the whole city. And these female friends don't really have the qualities to attract somebody like that, right? And if they think they have found that individual, he's faking it, that he is one of those 6 guys, right? So we'll save ourselves so much trouble in the dating scene if we actually are ourselves from the very beginning. This way, you're not wasting your time. Now, at the same time, there is some finesse that needs to go in, right? You can't just go straight on and say, oh, okay, wait a minute. This, unacceptable, take a walk, right? And I think that's the main reason why we turn into chameleons. So I'm not going against the principle of being able to hide yourself under certain circumstances, right? I'm talking about certain specific aspects of life, and one of them is you expressing your ideas, where not knowing who you are because you've been a chameleon for so long is going to basically sabotage your ability to express yourself, to get what you want in life, right? I think what I'm claiming here, actually, Jordan Peterson expressed it in a very good way. He said, stop saying things that make you feel weak after you say them. And if you really reflect on it, we do feel this. It's there. And if you have somebody in your life who has this ability to tell when you're being dishonest with yourself and others, they will react in a way that, if you're perceptive, you'll see that they've caught you doing it. And if it's somebody who loves you, for example, the criticism is even more harsh, I would say. They don't necessarily tell you directly that you're not being yourself, but indirectly they show you with their behavior that this is just not you. And what I've discovered is that it's a good idea to pay attention to that behavior instead of just getting into a state of mind where you start claiming that you're some kind of a victim by that behavior, when in fact this behavior from the other individual should be helping you in homing onto the self that it's your true self. So with all that said, I appreciate if some of you have endured till the end of this video, and go out there and just practice being yourself. It's fun.